Hey everyone, we're live. Welcome to Ecosystem Builders Orchestrating Growth. My guest today is Brent Earlywine. He's the Senior Director of Global Channels for Verizon Connect. Welcome, Brent. It's great to have you here.
Great to be here. Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing great. I am so excited to kick this brand new webcast off and to have you on our show. This is the first of many, I think, and this topic is so pertinent to our industry right now. So you were the first person to come to mind.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So glad that you agreed to come onto the show.
Yeah, of course. Happy to do it. Looking forward to it. I think it'll be a great conversation.
Cool. Tell me a little bit about yourself. I think probably your reputation precedes you a little bit.
Is that good or bad?
Let's have you introduce yourself. I just mentioned a little bit about you, but tell us who you are.
Yeah, no worries. So Brent Earlywine, Senior Director of Global Channels at Verizon Connect, like you said. But I always describe myself as I'm a channel guy. So look, I've been in high technology, software as a service. So I've been in the industry 37, 38 years, been around for a long time. But I've dedicated almost 100% of that time to being involved with or in channels in some way, shape, or form. So good news is I've had the opportunity and the luxury to do almost a little bit of everything, right? Everything from individual contributor as a channel account manager to a national partner manager to running teams at a local level, regional level, national level, global level, running programs, creating programs, you name it. I've probably touched it or had an opportunity to do something with whatever you might be doing in your business from an indirect route to market in some way, shape, or form. So with that, I always joke, I always say I get gray hairs on my face and scars on my back from some of those lessons learned, but definitely dedicated and specialized in channels. And then the other thing, and Vaughn, you and I talked about this the other day. So if anybody talks to me or spends any time with me, they'll find out pretty quick that I've been involved in martial arts for almost that exact same time period, 37 years and counting. And it's definitely stopped being a hobby a long time ago. And it's literally inherent in who and what I am. I run and own a school here in Pittsburgh in my spare time. I do that in air quotes.
Spare time.
Yeah, exactly.
So I've coached a lot of soccer competitively and whatnot, and I'm prone to telling people how soccer is life and how soccer is the same thing as business and different things like that. And I make those types of analogies a lot. Why don't you tell me how karate is life and how it has sort of guided your channel experience or has intertwined into your channel experience?
Yeah, it's been interesting. The other thing you and I talked about is I had a book kind of rattling around in my head for about 10 years or so, and I finally wrote it, released it, published it at the end of 2023, and it was all about that. It was the intersection between what I saw on the dojo floor and executive roles, leadership roles, and what those lessons look like, and the corollaries between both of those experiences. There were a couple of things that I would tease out, and then what I study and what I teach is actually a traditional Japanese jiu-jitsu. It's not karate. And then I also teach a traditional Japanese swordsmanship school as well. But some of the stuff that's pertinent to what we do on a daily basis. If you think of partners and channels and those kind of relationships, they're not a short-term engagement, right? You look at it over a longer horizon, 18 months, 24 months, how we're going to get together as businesses and align our go-to-market strategies and where we're going to get to over a longer timeline. And I think that's one of the lessons. The timeline in the dojo is not measured in days or weeks or months. It's measured over 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, right? Or even in my case, over multiple decades, where you set a goal to try to get to a particular level of understanding or a level of rank, if you will, and it takes you literally years to get there. And I think that's a mindset that's really important. When you talk to partners and you sit down with them and you're talking about how do we align our businesses together and where are we going to head, we got to deliver on short-term results. That's how everybody gets paid, right? So what's the month, what's the quarter, what's the year? But we're planning out over that 1.5 to 2 year timeline at the least. Any further than that maybe probably falls apart when you meet reality, but I think that's a mentality that has to be inherent in channel teams and channel relationships.
That's really cool. And, on top of that, every single person listening to this is going, man, this guy knows swordsmanship.
I've got some fun videos and photos. Anybody's interested, send me a note. I'll send it to you. I usually don't try to publicize some of that stuff, but happy to talk about it at any time. Other guys talk about sports. I talk about martial arts.
That's amazing. Martial arts is cool.
Yeah.
Especially, man, it's seeing its day in the sun for sure right now.
Oh, no doubt, right? Yeah, you glow up. My age, everybody wanted to be Bruce Lee. There's always, new hero or new exciting. That's how I got started, right? You have the stars in your eyes and what you want to do, and then it morphs really quickly into something else about being a better version of yourself. And then long term, it's also, as another lesson I'd call out for channel leaders is there's the mentorship aspect to it. It's like, you got to help somebody else that's coming up the path behind you, right? So how do you help them become a channel leader? How do you help instill those skills and mindsets that drive you towards success in an indirect channel kind of model? So that mentorship piece, I think, is also critically important.
Ooh, I love that. That's awesome. All right. Okay. So you've been in these types of roles. Well, first off, do you consider yourself a channel guy, an alliance guy, a partnership guy, all of the above?
Yeah, a little of all the above. I use different terms. Usually I like to describe channels. Channels are a really generic term, right? So to me, it's more about indirect routes to market, right? So if you take a look, if you're a vendor, you're a company, a manufacturer, whatever, you've got a market opportunity, total addressable market. You make some strategic choices on how am I going to go capture that market, right? I can do it in a direct fashion. I can do it in an indirect fashion. I can do it in some mix of all the above, which is typically where most companies fall to, or they make those decisions on a timeline, right? Maybe they, as a startup earlier in their process, they do it all direct, and then they start to turn on channels later. But to me, the indirect route to market covers all the different channel types, right? So you've got referrals and agents, you've got resale models, you've got, alliances, you've got what I would call big friends and influencers. I've heard the term shadow channel, which is kind of a fun term, but there's lots of ways to get to your market opportunity and lots of business engagement models on what those partners look like. The other thing I say that I've seen shift over the years, the definitions of each one of those are starting to get more gray. And if you go back 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, you had pretty clear resale models, value-added resellers, MSPs, system integrators. But even the partners themselves, they're defining their business models very differently today. They don't fit into really neat kind of boxes and buckets anymore. They typically have multiple engagement models that they're doing on a daily basis.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's morphing like that quite a bit. Now, what was your first channel or partnership role, and how did you find yourself there? A lot of people were salespeople, and someone came over to them and said, "Hey, I think you might be a good partner person." You went, "What? what is that?" And so tell us how you found your way into that and what that role looked like.
Yeah, long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, right? So similar, but it was kind of an interesting moment in time. I was working for a organization, and I was a sales rep, and I sold a pretty large deal, but I was selling 3Com equipment. If anybody remembers 3Com, right? They're now kind of basically gone and whatever. But the regional channel leader for 3Com, it was their deal. They got credit on it, right? I sold it. It was our mutual customer. And then she ended up having an opening on her team. She's like, you know what? I think you would really make a good channel account manager kind of person, individual contributor role. And at that time, early 20s, I'm like, yeah, sounds exciting. Let's go. And once I got into that role, I think it really spoke to, everybody has their own personality type, their own, ways they engage with other people. And I just felt that channels kind of fit my personality professionally. And I've never looked back. So once I started that, channel account management role with 3Com, I've just stayed on that path for, 3.5+ decades.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I'm known to tell people that relationships matter. And
Totally.
Whether you're in sales or channels or partnerships or whatever, relationships matter. And it's funny how often that pushes people into partnerships.
Yeah, agreed. The difference between I always use the term 30-day blinders, right? Somebody's really focused and can be really good on, get the deal, close it, book it, ship it, forget it, move on to the next one, versus long-term relationship building. Again, also shows up in really good sales teams, but, more of that, farmer versus hunter kind of mentality. And I think that channel roles lean more towards the farmer mentality, if you will, but you've got this boundary spanning role where you're interacting with partners and sales teams, internal and external, and how do you manage all those moving parts at the same time? It's a unique skill set.
Okay, so now flash forward to you've got a gigantic role, man. Now you're in Verizon Connect. These guys, they're the small part of an even giganticer organization. I mean, in and of itself, that Verizon Connect is, how big are they?
So Verizon Connect is our little piece of the world right inside of Verizon. We're probably, last year we would have ended up just shy of about 700 million in revenue at an annual basis, about 2,500 employees, 14 countries. So it's a pretty significant business all by itself. If you look at us through the lens of big Verizon, big red, 134 billion, right? So we're a rounding error on a accounting sheet, but all by ourselves, it's a pretty big business. And traditionally, the last 6-7 years since this has been put together as a piece of Verizon or division of Verizon, it's been all direct. So I came here specifically because the discussion at high levels inside of Verizon Connect is to grow faster and maximize our market opportunity. We really need to figure out a channel and a partner motion. And that's why I was recruited. That's why I came here, to figure out what does that look like, build it from scratch. Good news, bad news. Big Verizon already has a pretty robust channel program, channel teams, channel systems. But our little corner of the world, I can't just take that and use it. I'm literally building it again from scratch, kind of in parallel, almost mirroring some of what's going on inside of the bigger Verizon. So that's good and bad. Good news, I get to design it the way I want it. Bad news is I got to design it from scratch.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about that. Someone comes and goes, "Hey, I got a guy. His name's Brent. Let's bring him in." They get you in, and you walk into the org the first day. You know that you're going to have to build this thing from scratch. You're with Verizon Connect. You go, okay. There's not a lot of indirect here yet.
Yeah.
What does your first year look like? What do you have to do this year?
Yeah, so I started spring of 24, so I spent those 8 months or so really a little bit of assess, right? So what's here, what's not here, again, good news, bad news. There's a lot that wasn't here. And if you think of anything foundationally, all the way down to contract templates, to what's a program look like, define a partner, how do we engage, systems, processes, tools. So I spent a lot of time there, but we also spent a lot of time really being clear at a leadership level on what's the strategy, like what is this going to look like, and what does this look like over a multi-year horizon, right? So we actually looked at the strategy all the way out to 2028 and beyond, so 4-year plus kind of a horizon. We did financial modeling to talk about expectations around revenue contribution, profit, growth rates, different partner types. So, earlier I used the term that, indirect routes to market can include lots of partner kinds. So talked about referral, talked about resale, talked about marketplace, ecosystem integration partners, talked about alliances like insurance carriers specific to Verizon Connect. So I mapped out the strategy across those 4 main pillars. And then we put a timeline on it. What's going to be easier to launch first to get traction and real engagement, have partner relationships, and see actual, leads and opportunities and revenue. So we launched the referral program because it was an easier lift internally from an operation perspective, right? Pretty straightforward. That was still months worth of work by a lot of good people to put the program and the framework together. But we launched that 1st of November. So we're, high double-digit number of referral partners. And these are not master agent agencies. These are people that have signed a referral agreement directly with us as Verizon Connect. And we've seen real traction, both in funnel and real deals coming out of that already in a short amount of time. And then along the way, I've been working towards building out the resale program, which I should have launched here by the end of Q1. So again, in parallel and on overlap, doing a lot of work to figure out systems and tools and financial models and what the resale model looks like. So I get that launched. And then we had a marketplace, and we had about 100 to 120 third-party software integration relationships that were in our marketplace. But we hadn't necessarily done anything with them proactively. It was more of data sharing. So we've got usage data from our customers that we make available. We've got it under a firewall and permissions from the customers to share it. But then they could take it as a third-party software integration partner, and then they could surface it into their platform or do something with the data.
Okay.
We've been doing that for a couple of years, and that's all good. But that was really, really kind of table stakes, because then the conversation becomes, well, wait a minute. If they're super complementary, the customer's buying it anyways, next to, underneath, on top of my platform, why wouldn't we proactively figure out how to go to market together, get the sales teams to work together in mid-market and enterprise customers and prospects? In the long term, I'll figure out, why shouldn't I talk about putting their stuff on my paper, single invoice, make it simpler for the customer? And then also, why wouldn't I consider some of these, a short list of them, why wouldn't I talk about product integration, right? If they've got a capability that I can't do, or I can't do fast enough from a development roadmap, why wouldn't I just integrate them into my platform and deliver joint value to an end user customer? So that's another piece of that strategy. Okay, we have this baseline set of relationships, but now I got to figure out, like, what's step 2, step 3, step 4 as we move forward.
That's suspiciously starting to sound like an ecosystem.
very, very much so, yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about that. You go from these, early stage partnerships. You're starting to see some revenue coming out of that, and now you're talking about these kind of many to many type relationships.
Right.
What kind of innovations and strategies are you going to have to prioritize as you kind of move in that direction from a more traditional model to a more ecosystem-led model?
Yeah, I mean, it's a deep question, and there's multiple answers to it, right? So I think the first answer, and again, if anybody spends any time with me, I like to take a structured kind of programmatic framework type
Seen
of
your
approach.
frameworks. They're excellent. Maybe talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, thank you. No, I appreciate that. And it's kind of in self-defense, right? So it's repeatable and scalable when you have a good framework. So you got to spend a lot of time like figuring out what the framework should be or could be, and then again, see if it holds up when you meet reality. But we put a framework around all these relationships. We didn't have any sort of stratification. We didn't have a criteria of who's a better relationship than another, who's more complementary than another, who maps to a particular product or technology priority for us, who maps to specific vertical or specific customer segment. So we spent some time putting that framework together, really just to kind of say who's already here, but then where do they fit, right? Good, bad, or indifferent. I would say the vast majority, they're all good, but some are gooder or better than others, right? To make a simple joke out of it. But once we did that, it became really clear, like, kind of tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, or base level, mid-level engagement to like a strategic level. So it allowed us to stratify those relationships really quickly and then decide deploying resources against it, right? So it's people, time, effort. And it also helped us define what the engagement looked like. At a base level, simple API access, share data, developer agreement, y'all come, have at it. Mid-level was, hey, we put you in our marketplace. We have a deeper level, actual contractual relationship. We have benefits attached to that. You get visibility. We put you in front of our sales teams. Maybe it's cross referral. I refer you, you refer me. So really just starting to take those baby steps and go to market proactively. But the top of the pyramid, or the top of that level with the strategic partners, super complementary. Those are ones who are now candidates for bill on behalf of. I put it on my paper and sell you. You put me on your paper and sell me. We talk about joint development. I'm embedded in your platform maybe, or you're embedded in my platform. So the stratification, I think, was really, really important, but it had to be a consistent set of criteria to even understand who fit into what bucket.
Can I ask, I'm going to ask a self-serving question here. When you get that point, one of the things that I've found most difficult is trying to enable my own personal sellers to understand how to sell other people's stuff.
Yep.
Even when they're commissioned and they're quota retiring and things like that. How do you best enable sellers in your own organizations to be able to handle the sales process of other people's, contributing products that are bolted onto our own stuff?
Yeah, there's a trap there, right? So you don't want to distract your own salespeople to spend a lot of cycles and spend a lot of time on stuff that's not yours necessarily, unless there's a very clear value prop or very clear outcome that makes sense. I think it falls into a couple of answers, Vaughn. One, compensation, right? People are coin operated, right? They're not going to pay attention to anything you want them to pay attention to unless there's probably some, something in it for me. I think smart salespeople, especially in enterprise class play, they understand the stickiness of those additional solutions. It's harder to yank me out when I've got 2 or 3 complementary solutions all being installed, supporting each other, super complementary. So they figure out the value proposition is definitely a value prop to themselves as well as to the customers, is how I would say it. But I want to pay them for it too. That's why I like the bill on behalf of model, because then I collect top line revenue. I have a programmatic approach where I might keep 20 to 30 cents on every dollar as profit to carry the risk and carry the invoice. But it also funds an internal quota and compensation model for my own sales teams, right?
Yep. Well, that makes sense.
Yeah, the other piece there is you got to enable it, right? So I'm not going to enable for 120 partners, but I'll do really deep enablement around maybe 4 or 5 or 7 strategic integration partners that, again, have a very specific value prop. They map to a specific initiative or pillar in my roadmap. They map to a vertical. They map to, customer segment, right? So I can be very clear on where they fit in the sales process. And then the other thing is, what's the better together story? It can't just be capture revenue, capture profit, but it has to be like 1 + 1 = 3. And I mean that, right? It's like, what are they bringing to the table that to the two of us together are a really strong story in the customer's eyes? We may think it's a strong story, but the customer's got to agree it sooner at some point, right?
Right.
So what's that better together story? And you got to spend the time to define that better together story. What's the business use case? And then that better together story is the engine that drives the joint product development discussions. Like, all right, well, if this is a really good better together story, then maybe we should have super deep integration between the platforms. And again, I'm not going to do it with 20 people, I'm not going to do it with 100, but I'll do it with 2 or 3 or 5 or 7 over the course of a year or 2, right?
That makes total sense. Okay, good. That's good advice. Okay, so I'm always up for a good story. You've got 35 years in doing this. You've got to have seen some real good stuff from the trenches.
Yeah.
Give me a good story of something that you've seen either recently at Verizon Connect or even in some of your other roles where you were just inspired by something that happened or a nightmare from the trenches of something to avoid.
I'll give you 2 examples, and then I'll give you what I would say is the lesson that important for everybody to take away from it. So I spent about 16.5 years at Avaya, right? So Avaya, Unified Communications, contact center stuff. So Avaya at one point was a spinoff from AT&T and Lucent. That's where they took the hardware pieces off of AT&T and spun them out.
Yep.
But if you look over that time frame, Avaya systems went from analog to digital. So there was an industry shift and a technology shift that was pretty significant at the time that it happened. And then pretty quickly after the shift to digital for telephony systems, it made the shift from digital to cloud-based, right? So it was on-prem to cloud-based consumption models. And we saw that all over the place, right? The birth of software as a service, as an example. What was important inside of that is the sheer level and scale of the disruption and having to redo a product platform from scratch. And it also trickled all the way down to the relationships with the channel partners. Like, what are you selling? How are you selling it? What's the sales motion? What's the value proposition discussion? So it wasn't just a refresh cycle, but the shift from digital and on-prem to cloud is a prime example of that. It completely turned everything on its head. People, partners as well, they had to figure out compensation models, right? It used to be sell a system, point in time, project-based, big sale, big commission, move on to the next one. But in a cloud model, it's like, well, wait a minute. might be a big deal over 3 years, but how do I pay my people? Do I pay them and accelerate it all up front? Do I pay them $5 a month for 36 months? Like, what does that look like? So pretty heavy disruption. The lesson that I would take from that and have taken for that, or from that, excuse me, is there's always going to be disruption. Something's going to, come in, change a market, destroy a market, create a new market. I don't remember who said it, but it's a phrase that's always stuck with me. If you don't destroy your own business model, somebody else will do it for you, right? So you should always be in this mode of what's next and how do I stay in front of it? Because sooner or later, somebody else is going to eat my lunch, right? If I'm not paying attention and, innovating and changing on a daily basis. Now, partnerships and relationships can be stabilizing consistency inside of that, but underneath it is what's the impact, right? Not just to us, but also to our outside third-party partners. And then how do I help them? How do I be better at, helping them be a better business? How do I help them for their own sales teams and their own go-to-market motions? They're independent third-party businesses in it to figure out profit, but that doesn't mean they're not struggling just like I am, right? So if I figure out a lesson, how do I take that out to my channel and partner community?
Yeah, that was great. If I don't destroy it, someone else will.
Totally. See it all around you. Happens every single day. Pick an industry.
No doubt. Okay, so I always like, with guys like you, they're all you've seen it all. What's one or two tips that you can give to folks in terms of things they should watch out for, or things that they can do for their careers? You found yourself in senior roles. What can folks do to either, build better channels or help their careers so that they can make their way through the channel into senior roles? Give some advice.
Yeah, I got a couple things. There are certain things that are near and dear to my heart, being in channels for so long. One thing that I shout from the rooftops all the time is, if you're a vendor, if you're a channel manager or channel leader, never forget that a partner is an independent third-party business. They don't work for you. They work for themselves. The definition of partnership is two independent organizations or individuals deciding to work together and towards common goals, right? And I think sometimes channel teams lose that concept along the way, thinking that, hey, it's a cash register, bring me deals, you work for me, I say jump, they say how high. That's not how this works, right? So partners can always vote with their feet and their checkbooks and their people and go partner with somebody else. So I never forget to thank a partner for their partnership on a daily, weekly, monthly, and yearly cadence, right? It's like, I appreciate you partnering with me for long-term goals. And then the other thing that I tell you is plan for the long-term horizon, right? Don't do this in 30-day blinders, quarterly blinders. Plan for the 18 to 24-month time horizon. I think that's critically important. And you got to plan the work too, right? I'm also a big fan of, put this down on paper, right? We both look at it, partner, my team, we do it together. Where are we going to go? Who's going to do what? Owners' actions and timelines. And then you come back and you say, yeah, did I do it? Did you do it? Didn't do it? Right? Good idea. It worked out great. Let's do more of it. Or, hey, good idea. It didn't work out. Let's do something different. The process of planning, I think, makes it so much stronger when you put it on paper and then both people are accountable for it. The other thing you'll hear me say a lot, no plan ever survives first contact with reality, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't do the planning. When reality rears its ugly head, all you do is just, you pivot, you tweak it, and you keep on moving, right? So I think those are all critical pieces. And then the mentorship. So if you're on the way up, right? So if you're earlier in your career, find a mentor. How did they get to that role, right? So spend that time. Is there a skill set that you need to pick up? Is there exposure to a type of work that you haven't done yet? Make sure that you're rounding out that skill set, but have a mentor. A mentor is going to help you kind of short circuit that process. And if you're already a leader, you need to turn around and be a mentor for somebody else. And then the last piece that I'll give you, Vaughn, is learn to read a P&L statement. If you can't, basic financial information, if you can't speak to a partner's business owner or principal at a financial level, you have no reason being in a channel job. You have to be able to speak to, like, how do they run their business? How do they make money? What's a P&L look like?
Learning how to read a P&L was maybe the most important thing that ever happened to my career.
100%.
Yeah, it's crazy. Brent, thank you. This was great. I really appreciate you spending the time with us. And
Of course.
you know, I've admired what you've been doing for quite a while, and it's really great to have you here. You're a real asset to the channel and a real asset to partnerships. So thank you for everything that you've done, and long may that continue.
Thank you very much, Vaughn. Really appreciate the partnership with you in particular, as well as Mind Matrix and the rest of the team. So sincerely appreciate it. Have a great day, man.
All right, take it easy. Thanks,
right.
everyone. We'll talk soon.
Bye, guys.
Bye.